So since we have
Maybe I'd be cognizant. Maybe
Liz is in the audience, should we go to the bond resolutions?
I'm sure Liz would like to get home.
She likes it.
We do not have to vote on approving the audit. The board's policy is that before the audit can be submitted, it's reviewed publicly.
Okay, cool.
Because technically, an audit is a third-party vendor doing auditing
Okay.
your financials and your
Gotcha.
practices. So if we approved it, then you could have influence on them.
Got it.
Say that right?
Yeah. You got a CPA, right?
Hi, Liz. How are you?
Good evening.
Marianne, what page are we on in the board book?
285,
We're jumping around here. 285?
I believe so. Is where the resolution sits.
Okay.
And Liz had prepared a couple documents for us, so I'll let you do.
New ones?
We just had a cover memo where she summarized. Give me 1 second. 285. So we have the resolutions. Liz, we included also in the board packet. We have a cover memo from you, correct?
Correct.
Summarizing the recommendations and the changes. I'm looking for that.
It's on page 263, it starts there. 262, I'm sorry.
262. Yes, we're good. So go ahead, Liz. Why don't you introduce
Sure.
what you...
So the first item you're considering is the parameters bond resolution for not to exceed $4,860,000 general obligation limited tax school bonds. This consists of $1,860,000 of life safety projects reflected in Life Safety Amendment 22, and it also reflects $3 million of bond proceeds. This resolution, as well as the refunding resolution you'll be looking at in a minute, are parameters resolution, in that they have outside amounts that cannot be exceeded. They have a maximum interest rate and maximum levies. This first resolution, incorporating both the life safety bonds and the working cash bonds, allows for either the 10-year repayment of those limited bonds or the 7-year repayment that we talked about at the prior meeting. So the resolution is good for either option. In my memo, I recommend the 7-year option after we've discussed it at several meetings, simply because it is less costly in total interest by just under $270,000 over the life of the bonds. And I also included the analysis that we've been looking at, answering Dr. Keene's question on the PV to the homeowner. So whereas the interest cost is $270,000 less for the option with 7 years versus 10 years, the difference to the homeowner is only about $8. So it's not in homeowner expenditure a lot different, but over the life of the bonds it is a good chunk of change. And as I mentioned in my memo, what you save in interest on the bond issue results in having higher future flexibility by that same amount within your debt service extension base if you need to use it in the future.
So the recommendation is 7 from the administration. However, the board can obviously change that to 10. And as Liz explained, it's about an $8 difference on a $350,000 home per year.
That's a present value.
Present value.
So that's the difference in today's dollars.
Today's dollar.
Can somebody confirm why we did it $1,860,000 for the life safety?
So originally we were going to be under $2 million. We had roughly $86,000 that we completed the granite panel work in last fall when we finished Exit G.
Okay.
and those bills had been paid out of life safety funds, out of access life safety funds. Once the amendment was approved to do the work, we proceeded with the work, and we had leftover life safety funds from the previous bonds, so we were okay, and we were okay to pay those out of life safety account.
Okay.
And so Liz and I discussed that we don't think it's worth, and plus we might be over some of the timelines of reimbursing ourselves to the life safety fund. So since we ran under, we were okay using those funds.
And the other couple items that we went back to the state on, they rejected our
Correct.
appeal on, right?
Correct.
Okay. Could you explain, you said the resolution has parameters as to maximum amount of issuance and interest rates.
Correct.
So who's taking the risk on the interest rates if we pass a resolution?
The interest
What's the
rate
max
is
that you're-
max, cannot exceed 5%.
And what do we think though, if they were issued right now, it'd probably be at
An all-in true interest cost for the 10-year of $294.
the 7 years, what you recommend?
Yeah, and $275 on the 7-year.
So I guess there's not a great risk. The interest rates could almost double between when we pass the
No.
resolution and when we issue the bond. Okay.
The 5% also has to do with like a maximum coupon,
Okay.
because I go on in my memo to discuss, some of you have asked reasonably so, why in the offering document would you see an amount that might look lower than what we're actually going to get in proceeds?
Mhm.
And the answer to that is because investors demand bond premium these days.
Mhm.
So the premium combined with the par amount provides the proceeds for your project, whether it's the $1,860,000 for life safety, the $3 million for working cash, plus paying the cost of issuance. So that's why the par amount on the offering document seems lower. And 5% is the coupon that sometimes investors demand as a maximum, not more than that based on current market conditions.
Thank you.
And Liz, you have on the next page the bond rating.
Yes, congratulations. The district's bond rating of AA+ stable was confirmed, as well as a management rating of good. So I'm very appreciative to the time and effort that Dr. Skinkis and Scott spent with us and the bond rating agency, about a 2-hour interview and PowerPoint presentation, and sending all your practices and policies to the rating agencies as evidence of your diligence, and very strong rating, just one notch below the very top rating of AAA.
So I still didn't get a good answer on why we didn't get, we have a neighbor that's just to the west of us that has Brookfield, LaGrange Park in its district, and yet they have a better rating than us.
Yeah.
She explained that.
Did you get that
So what was the
comparison,
reason?
the side by side? So if you look at their EAV, it's almost 3 times as big as 208. It's like $2 billion.
6 billion. They're at an $8 billion, and we're at $2
full
billion.
value. So that's the number one reason, is the size of their tax base.
Median income was double.
Yeah.
Property
Housing
value was double.
Right. So, and when you look at that size of property value versus their debt per capita and debt per EAV ratios are much lower than yours. Again, simply because of the size of
Again,
the
we
base.
go, you levy the debt, right? You levy to collect the debt.
Right.
So the assumption is that our levy is less than, our levy quality is less than their levy quality,
It's just their tax base is bigger.
but you're levying a multiple on that EAV.
Well, I can't speak for the rating agencies, they do their own analysis, but lower debt per capita and lower debt per value, they view as positive, which is why that other district is just one notch higher than you.
So what Gary's question seems very logical to me. The risk to the bondholders is no greater for us than it is for them, regardless of the size of their EAV, their average income, and their average house cost. Because once we levy the debt, the county collects it, we never touch the money, and it pays off the bonds.
Right.
So I guess if I would put his question a different way, it's like, why do the rating agencies not, and they analyze it based on that?
Yeah.
Since we can't get the money anyway, right? Where, yes, if they were general obligation bonds and if it just came into the treasury, our treasury, and we didn't have a specific obligation, it wasn't a set aside to pay it, they're obviously a better credit risk than we are, just looking at the numbers side by side. But the fact is, that's not how it's done. We do our levy, the money goes to the county, and it goes directly to the...
Actually, it comes to your treasurer. It's not a direct intercept where it goes from the county to the bond registrar paying agent. It comes to your treasurer and it goes into the bond and interest fund. But if push came to shove...
It goes to the county treasurer, though. I mean, to the township treasurer.
The township school treasurer.
It never comes in any of our bank accounts.
Right, but they handle all of your funds.
They also handle Lyons Townships, don't they? So
Different.
that portion of the risk of whether they're actually going to get paid the way they're supposed to is just as great for the bondholders in Lyons Township as are for us, because both of those receipts are going to the same township treasurer and they're paying the same thing. So if the township treasurer doesn't pay, it's just as risky for the LT district bondholders as it is for us.
Yeah, but their point is, if push comes to shove and we go into a huge recession again, and your collection rate would likely go down farther than theirs, given that their base is 3 times bigger than yours. They've got 3 times more people paying than you do. So that's the simple point there.
And what would
But
be
they have a lot more businesses in there, so the likelihood of a recession, you have people who are going to be in their
Maybe,
residential
yes,
areas,
yeah.
right? And they're not going to necessarily, pack their bags and then leave their house. They want to stay in it.
What's the
But you have a likely,
That wasn't true last time around.
Well,
People were just...
compared to a restaurant, compared to stores,
I don't know,
compared
I knew a lot of people who
to
just
Pier
pulled up
1,
stakes
compared to
and-
things like
and
that,
let
where you
their
have a lot of
houses go
EAV
this
that's
last time
associated
around. A lot.
with commercial. Anyways,
You
and
know,
the other question I had was, is the district overall getting rated or individual bonds getting rated?
The district overall.
Okay, then why did the fee get split up, assigned to the 3 different bonds as a methodology?
We just allocated it.
So the fee was 21,000 and
Yeah.
you just allocated it over to 3.
Right. But if you issued them separately in different times,
It would have cost us 60.
it would have cost you more for the rating, more for the bond council, and the fee would have been much higher.
What's the spread between a government AAA and AA plus? Do you have any idea?
For municipal bonds,
Yeah.
5 to 10 basis points.
So we're talking, and again, we'd take 5 to 10 basis points if we could get it, but
Yeah.
it's not a significant difference because
Correct.
you're both pretty highly rated.
You're at the top of the scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think before we take any formal action, board needs to decide, are we, before we read the resolutions, 7 or 10 year? And if there's discussion.
Like, I was the only guy with a 10-year last time, but I think I'm still, I'm still thinking about, we talked about the risk and the immediate risk. We're talking about getting money or not getting money. We're spending more every year, or we have in the last 3 years, and unless it's going to change in the next couple of years, we're out of money, So we can raise someone's taxes $60, or we can raise it $35. So I don't know if and I know it's a shorter period, 3 years. What does it go up to? Because there's different scales, but I think this last one here is pretty much $60, 59 to 62 or something.
Yep, 61, 62.
So
for the
over
first
10 years, Liz, is it
6 years.
358?
Yeah, 358 in total for the 10-year, over those 10 years, and over those same period of time, 326 on the 7-year. So,
You said it was $8, didn't you? Oh, on a
Present value.
Present value basis.
so
I just think when we dig into, what happens in 5 years when we want more money, and now we're getting people up to $100, you know, in their brain. The $60 plus, oh, you're gonna throw in $30 on me, now it's $90. You guys are killing me. Or
He's saying if we
did it-
wanted to do a
referendum.
Oh, I'm
if
sorry.
something ever
Gotcha.
happened for 5 years,
Gotcha.
right? Or there's no plans of that right now.
Yeah, there's no plan for that. I'm just.
He's
I'm looking at-
forecasting, no doubt,
we're-
no doubt.
You know, we don't have any more money. He just said the state's not giving us more money, and we're spending more. Everybody's getting a raise. Maybe. I mean, you know, it's just positive thinking there. You know, that's the way that's why I'm getting to my flat 10-year, 35. That's over.
But you're okay with the district spending an additional $250,000 that it doesn't need to? The
On
difference in
interest.
interest. Like as a taxpayer, I
Yeah.
don't want the district
No,
to spend
I
an extra.
get that. I'm
What was
not,
it,
you know, it's against my
269?
nature, but
If you did
But I
a
also
present
have to
value
go out
on
there
that,
and-
it'd be less than 200,000 probably, right?
Actually, Tim, the present value is $265,000. The total interest is like $300,000.
Yeah, there's
I mean, you can look at this a
269.
bunch of ways. I think if you're going to present this as a referendum issue, or any referendum, it should be presented in terms of, you know, taxpayers' house is worth $200,000, it's going to cost you this much a year over how many years. Since we're talking about as a board and we're looking at the district expenditures of funds, I think we have to look at it, frame it as the board issue, which means if we go with 10 years, we are paying an extra $265,000 now for that benefit. There's no way in my mind, that can be justified. So I'd support the 7-year issue.
I agree with you, John.
I agree.
Well, I think both points are valid. I think West Point's valid. People are gonna look at what hits my bill on an annual basis, the 30 versus 60. And I think the point's valid too, that at a present value, which people don't think present value when they're looking at a tax bill, it's only $8 and we're going to save $250,000 in interest over the time. So, and I try to rely heavily on what our consultants and our administration recommend. Since you're both recommending 7 years, I would lean towards doing 7 years.
Laura and Gary, the only two haven't commented.
I can see Wes's point. I mean, when we take out a mortgage, we know we're paying a lot more for a house because we spread it over 30 years because we're looking for the payment that fits. And that's what Wes is doing. He's looking for a payment that fits comfortable. And then on the other hand, the benefit of 7 years is it's paid off, and if we have to borrow more after 7, it gives us a little more opportunity to do that. So, you know, I can support either one. You know, I really don't have an opinion. I could see value in both.
Oh, I'm a 7-year person, so it's always on 7.
Okay. So Liz,
Can I say something about Wes's point too? I totally agree with Wes about the money issue. And the way we address this is like we talked about before with the budget. You know, come December, January, we start looking at if we have to cut back on course offerings, not necessarily class sizes, but course offerings. We do that so we're not running out of money, and we're not running deficits, and we're not going to have to go for a referendum unless it's absolutely necessary.
okay, so Liz, I think from hearing a vocal discussion from the board is 7 versus 10. And I think you wanted to add one comment?
Yeah, I did. Well, I want to ask a question first, then I'll add a comment. We're going to, assuming we do this, we're going to adopt the suggested resolution here. That's all for today, right?
Correct.
And two things.
resolutions.
Two
Two
resolutions,
resolutions.
sorry. But then there's a tremendously long, like 50-page set of documents between two of them, which have a lot of blanks that have to be filled and all that. That'll be done after the fact by
Right.
yourself and our attorneys.
So
once
I
we
got
have
an
the
answer for you, and
information.
it's the reason the parameters resolutions, there's a dash anywhere where it says 20 and then there's a dash, is when the board passes this parameters resolution, it gives like a 6-month window for the bond sales to occur in the event that something bad happens or the market change, and in the event it's swung into 2018. That's why the last two numbers
Okay.
aren't filled out.
But I mean, there's a bunch of
Yes, it
different
will all be
things.
filled in once
Yeah,
the
and let me
bond
just mention something.
designations.
In these resolutions, there's this thing in the middle. It's called the form of the bond, and it's section 7. In the first resolution, it starts on page 15, and it goes all the way through page 21.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun reading.
That's where all those blanks are. What that thing is supposed to be an example of what the actual bond looks like.
Okay.
Which is a green sheet of paper, and so that's where most of those
Okay.
blanks are, and those will stay blank. The whole idea is we're just showing you an example
Okay.
of what the actual bond will be.
And then Gary and I need to be available, you said Thursday?
Right, so.
Just via phone, correct?
Via phone. The original plan was to go to market Thursday, and I will have a final answer for you tomorrow. We have a week that is volatile, and that's one of the beauties of a parameters resolution. We have the state of Illinois issuing $6 billion of bonds tomorrow. They moved up their sale. Tonight is the earliest on our schedule with our approval process that we could come to you with the bond resolution. So depending on how tomorrow goes, we may say, let's look to next week or maybe the week after, based on market and what our underwriting people are giving us
We have a
feedback.
better rating in the state, don't we?
Sorry?
We have a better bond rating in the state, don't we?
Better than last year.
No, better in the state.
Oh, your bond, yes, that's what they keep telling me. They say, oh, your bond is not, nothing in comparison. But you can't overlook the fact
Yeah, I
that
understand.
$6
$6 billion,
billion
right.
Illinois paper is coming into the market tomorrow. So.
Okay,
we're going
well,
to-
The other question.
And
I
it's the
had-
same buyer?
You
Buying
knew
that
that.
stuff versus buying this stuff?
You knew that, right? But they moved it up, right? We had talked about that.
Yeah,
Yes,
we've
Right.
talked about
we did talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, it is different buyers.
And if I recall, we basically only had one buyer last time anyways, a bank, didn't we?
Well, that's when we did that bank qualified
Yeah.
issue. This issue is non-bank qualified, and part of it's taxable, so a bit different buyers. Non-bank qualified because we're over 10 million with the refunding, which is not to exceed 23 million. And then the taxable 3 million will have a little bit different buyer. So it's not going to be the same bank type market this time.
The second question I had, Kevin, is you had looked at the retainer agreement with Chapman and Cutler.
Correct.
And you pushed them back and talked to them about the fees they were going to charge. You were able to get them down about $17,000.
Correct, we saved an additional $17,000. I had a conference call with them, and we were able to use the 2015 fees. And if you go to page, the sources and uses page on 268 of board book, the current board book, Mary Ann, if you put that up, it just gives you an idea of sources and uses, use of funds is how much it costs to issue bonds. And so when you see some of the fees to, between the underwriters, the bond counsel, disclosure counsel, the fees are rather large, but as Liz clarified earlier, and just to put it in layman's, they sell these actual bonds at a premium, and so the premium dollars cover, so it's not like we're really issuing 3 million of working cash bonds and only getting 2 point something, the premiums cover the cost of issuance, so they're not at the expense of the district.
So the last point I wanted to make is we did receive a petition from some of the residents, the voters, in our public hearing and our notice. As was required, we notified the public that if 10% of the voters in the district signed the petition, not the life safety, but the working cash bonds could be required to be done by referendum. Needed about 2,400 signatures, and the people who obtained the signatures got about 370. So they needed 10%, and they got a little less than 1/5 of the 10%. And we all understand everybody's not going to be favored, just like we're having a discussion of 7 and 10 years and how much it is. But we do think that, in essence, it is supporting the proposition that the the voters think we're doing the right thing because so few, 2% of people are against everything that we've done probably, or more than that in most instances. So, and we don't think that, it's an indication of actually we feel there's support for this issuing the bonds. But we did want to recognize, we know that people did go out to the effort. Some people are against the idea, but again, the board will speak for itself when it votes for the resolution, but we did want to recognize the fact we are aware of that happened. But at least from my perspective, based on the law and how things are done, it's in essence supportive of the proposition of issuing the bonds.
Okay, are we ready for a resolution? Well, we need a motion and a resolution and a second, correct?
Correct.
And Liz, we need to make sure we cover everything correctly, so.
What page is that resolution?
Is this the one we're supposed to read, Marion?
It's
Okay.
2842.
Resolution providing for the issue of not to exceed $4,860,000 general obligation limited tax school bonds of Township High School District Number 28, Cook County, Illinois, for the purposes of altering and reconstructing school buildings and purchasing and installing equipment therein for fire prevention and safety, energy conservation, and school security purposes, and increasing the working cash fund of said school district, providing for the levy of a direct annual tax to pay the principal and interest on said bonds, and authorizing the execution of a bond purchase agreement with Raymond James and Associates, Inc. in connection with the proposed sale of the bonds. Before I move on, how do we memorialize the fact whether we're going to go with a 7 or a 10 year if it's not in the resolution?
The resolution allows for either, and I'm going to act based on your direction that you gave me.
But how do we
minutes
as a
ago.
board not tell you how to act unless we put in a resolution that it's a 7 year?
If you feel more comfortable making a motion, that would be fine.
I would say just a
I
motion
would.
to amend the resolution.
I'll amend well, I'm not done reading it. I'm going to
Now,
add
I
something.
think this resolution should stand on its own because
Okay.
it doesn't have a 7 or 10 year option
Okay.
in it. It just allows you to do either.
Okay.
And then once
I
we
will do a
approve
separate
this, if you could do a
resolution for that.
separate, just a motion of the board, that would
Okay.
be.
Does the breakout need to be put in the resolution?
It's actually
It's
in
in-
the body of the resolution, but in the motion.
Motion?
This is the legal requirement.
All right.
So that's my motion.
Did you finish,
Yes.
finish
He
reading?
did.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Dr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Sierra?
Yes.
Mr. Smithing?
Yes.
Ms. Towner?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Want to do a separate?
Well, in the one, we're going to do a resolution for refunding too, right?
Right. But if
So
you want to
I'll
do.
first do, just bring me one of the standard res, we have one here.
Why don't you look at the
I
recommendation
can just
for
do
your,
it off the one that's here. Resolve the Board of Education Township High School District 2A, Cook County, Illinois, approves a 7-year term for the general obligation tax bonds not to exceed $4,860,000 as discussed during the October 24th, 2017 board meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Sierra?
Go for the vote.
Dr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Sierra?
Yes.
Mr. Smithing?
No.
Ms. Towner?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Ms. Ruska?
yeah,
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Now we have to do a resolution for the refunding bonds, right?
Right.
You know what page it's on?
Try,
360.
It's not working.
326.
Resolve, resolution providing for the issue of not to exceed $23 million general obligation refunding school bonds of Township High School District Number 28, Cook County, Illinois, for the purpose of refunding certain outstanding bonds of said school district, providing for the levy of a direct annual tax sufficient to pay the principal and interest on said bonds and authorizing the execution of a bond purchase agreement with Raymond James and Associates, Inc. in connection with the proposed sale of said bonds.
Got a second?
Second.
Go for the vote.
Ms. Sierra.
Yes.
Mr. Smithing.
Yes.
Ms. Towner.
Yes.
Mr. Welch.
Yes.
Ms. Ruska.
Yes.
Dr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Goodchick.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Liz, when does the bond start coming off from the obligation? Is it 2025 when the first one to be refinanced? I know you had that in your,
The 2015 I'm
yeah.
sorry.
When did the taxpayers start to see a big savings? 2026 tax year or 2025?
Oh, I know what you're asking. When the bonds are retired, 2026 is the last year.
Is when taxpayers would see a significant,
The
like,
year after, so it'll be
500.
2027, and that's when all the bonds are paid off, the referendum bonds, you're debt-free, and the tax relief is $507, something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask one more question? Just to get you on the record again. So if for some reason negotiations with the zoo, this $3 million isn't used for what we had planned it for, how do we get it back to the taxpayers if we decide to do that?
Through tax abatement.
There was two options, I thought.
Two options.
There's a tax abatement, okay.
So let's say you have $2 million left, and you want to abate the levy down so the taxpayers are no longer paying that. You can do that for as long as you have that money. So you direct the county clerk not to levy the tax for debt, and then you transfer those bond proceeds back into the debt service account, and then they pay it. That's the first option, abatement. Second option is you take whatever money you have left over and invest it in an escrow so it starts paying off, earning interest, and then it will pay off the bonds when they can be called, or the longest bond first. And these bonds are not callable because it's only 7 years, okay? So it'll pay off the bond coming due in year 7 at maturity, but between the time you decide to pay it off and maturity, it will be invested in U.S. Treasury securities, so it'll be earning some interest. So it probably will not, if rates are the way they are now, it's not clear that those rates will offset the rate on the bonds, but as interest rates continue to go up, maybe it'll be close. So that would pay off.
Are we allowed to invest in state of Illinois bonds? There's an arbitrage issue there, isn't it?
Unfortunately, Gary,
We're not allowed to invest in state of Illinois bonds,
you can't invest in those
right?
because they are
The one issue
below
we got to be clear on, right, is we can't 100% reduce the levy, right? Because we're still going to have to levy for the interest portion.
Well, the abatement, you abate both principal and interest.
But we only have the principal portion.
You only have the principal.
So we would still have
So-
to collect for the interest.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Whereas the defeasance, you can earn a little interest.
Or we can invest in state of Illinois bonds and make an arbitrage situation here.
All right, let's keep.
All right.
Thank you very much, Liz. Gary and I will be available by cell phone. Just let us know tomorrow. Okay.
Thank you very much.
We're on 5B then, right?
Yeah, so we'll go to.
All right, let's move on to
President's report.
President's report. There's nothing to report out.